Hello. How are you?
Keeping it real, keeping it real, keeping it real with Shannon, shining through, laughs and insight, shining so bright. Keeping it real, it feels so right. Real, keeping it real, keeping it real, keeping it real.
Hello, and welcome to the show tonight. Oh, I'm so excited tonight to be here. This is Women's History Month, so we're celebrating women, but tonight we're celebrating us. So I like to introduce my panel tonight. We have on Miss Tiffani Shannon. She's an insurance investigator. Uh, uh, We have a successful lawyer, Krista Clarke, on. We have a digital creator that creates some of everything, Miss Carol Nelson. Hello there, ladies. How are you?
Hello.
I'm a successful educator, host, and producer of the show. So
All
welcome to the
right.
show tonight. So
Oh,
hi, ladies. How you doing?
I'm
Good.
doing great.
We're
So we
good.
want to hear. So tonight we're talking about the challenges that we face as we move up the career ladder. To become successful in everything. And I thank God that we all have succeeded in mostly what we wanted to do. So we can share our experiences and what
Mm.
we went through because we know a lot of other women have gone through the same thing that we have gone through and stuff. And I'll start with myself because I started out as an educator and I had to face a lot of racism at that time because I worked for the bank, started off at the banks, and then I went to the Board of Education. And then that's where the real thing started, like when you want to get positions and stuff they would stop you from getting position. They put someone else in a position, and then you got to fight, file cases, grievances, just to get the position that you deserve. And there were so many times that I had to do this, and I had to learn. I had to really learn the hard way of how to get this done. And it was what started me off on my career to make sure that I was able to move up was the boss that I was working for. He was a tall, slim, good-looking white man with salt and pepper hair, and he was the one put me on the right path. Because when I came to the Board of Ed, I think I was around about 22, 23, and I was like a little militant. If you said something to me, I said something back to you, and that's the way it was. And one day I was out in the hallway yelling at one of the directors. He came to the door and screamed at me and told me to get in the office right away. And I came in the office. He was like, "Why are you down there screaming at him?" I said, "Because he was talking down to me. This ain't no plantation. Who he think he is?" And so he said, "Come in this office and sit down." And he was the one telling me that is not the way you handle a situation. Everybody has a boss. You have to get used to a pen and paper because it's very powerful. And that's what you use when you want to straighten something out. Because you never want people to see that side of you that you were down there yelling at somebody in the hallway because then they're going to say you difficult to work with. You have to learn how to do it in a professional way. And he gave me a good talking to, and that leaped me from going from position to position while I was there because I always kept in mind what he said to me. That's why I don't put everybody in no one basket when they be talking about white people. No, people, anybody that likes you will help you. And I thank him to the day for putting me on the right track because I might have been still a little militant today. Well, I can't say that I ain't a little bit of militant yet.
No, I mean, I totally agree with that about not putting everyone in the same basket because when I first started my career, I was at a wonderful company. I was moving up and everything. And then somebody told me to go to another company because, you'll make more money, you'll get more experience. I went there and then all hell broke loose. It was a different story. And I felt like I was dealing with discrimination. It was a whole lot that I was dealing with, just always trying to prove myself, even though I know that I'm a good worker. They know that I'm a good worker, but these are the things that I had to face. And I mean, um, I've really climbed up the ladder, but it didn't come easy, which
Mhm.
is unfortunate because it's just like, why do we have to go through these things?
Yeah. I mean, it's really a challenge too. I think the biggest thing that I faced initially was trying to balance wanting to be a wife and a mother along with having a career. And most people early on told me, you'd have to focus on one and then maybe you could get the other one later.
Right.
And I really have to give all the glory and honor to the Lord God Almighty, because I remember when I told my father and my grandfather that I wanted to be an attorney, they told me you're going to be a stay-at-home wife and mother. And I was like, those two jobs don't really go together. And I thank God that I mean, I got pregnant pretty early on. I remember even in law school, women being telling other women to not wear their wedding rings when they would go on job interviews, because they wouldn't probably get the job if it was known that they were newly married, because they were likely to get pregnant. And so I remember hearing so many people give me that advice, and I was like, I'm going to wear my wedding ring. I'm a young woman. I did just get married, and I'm going to be able to balance both of these things. And I thank God that I got pregnant for the first time at 27, which is really young for a professional career woman to
Mhm.
have a child. Um, and the Lord has blessed me to be able to. I have 4 children, and I'm a very devoted wife and mother. But I've been able to also balance being an attorney in addition to wearing some other hats. So I'm just really grateful to God for really revealing how it can be done, because that definitely, there was a lot of sexism in
Right.
the beginning. I remember when I interned for a law firm, and the one of a new partner came in, and he kept telling me to go get coffee, go get the donuts. And I was like,
Yes.
I'm not the secretary. I'm not the assistant.
Hmm.
I'm actually, and he never said that to any of the male interns in the office, but he kept saying it to me. And I just, I got the things. I didn't have an issue with it, but I did notice the way that I was treated was so much different. But I made sure that my work is what spoke for itself, and that I
Hmm.
continued to push and make sure that my work
Right.
was stellar. And I think that
Hmm.
that has definitely made the difference.
Hmm.
But do you find that you had to, how can I put this? Even though your work speaks for itself, it seems like you have to go above and beyond when you're doing certain tasks and stuff like that. Just
Yeah.
to, when I go back to what I said before, just trying to prove, like, I'm
Hmm.
capable of this position.
Well,
Hmm.
unfortunately, there are a lot of people who tend to think that, because you're a person of color, that means that you're not qualified. And that is the furthest from the truth. I think a lot of people don't understand affirmative action. They don't understand DEI. They're very confused about these things. And that's why this misunderstanding and misconception leads to people believing that somehow that means that you're unqualified, when actually it means that you're overqualified in a lot of
Hmm.
instances. And that's what I found, is that most of the people that are in these positions, I was just recently at NYU, and the dean is a person of color, and I was listening to his resume, and I was just like, this man is beyond qualified for this position. But yet there might be some people in this room that thinks that he is some sort of DEI hire, when it could be nothing further from the truth. This man is overqualified for this position. And so that is something that I think is unfortunate, that people don't understand what these things really mean. And so they bought into the fact that maybe these people aren't qualified. I was taught as a kid that as a person of color, I needed to be 5 times better.
Hmm.
And I grew up with my grandfather, who grew up in the South in Mississippi. My grandfather was supposed to go to medical school, and instead he had to go fight in the war because of the color of his skin, and was very, very upset about that. And I remember hearing about that all the time, about how he was denied the privilege of not having to go to the war because of the color of his skin, when he was more talented than his white counterparts that got to skip that part and go straight to medical school. And that was something that always angered him, and he spoke about. But eventually he did forgive, and he was able to move on. But he taught us that make sure that you're 5 times better. And
Hmm.
I carried that when I went to the Ivy League, when I went to Columbia University. When I went to law school, I made sure that everything I did was that much better so that nobody could be able to say
Mhm.
anything.
Yeah,
Um,
well, yeah, you have to do that. Yeah, Carol.
Well, I had to think hard about this because maybe it's working with children. I worked with very small children as a speech therapist early on. I became a digital and AI enthusiast later in life. And I found that I have more to share about my mom than me because she was one of the first Black women to work for Con Edison at the time that she was born in 1939. So this is a long time ago. And she would always tell me stories that the Caucasian counterparts from high school would be hired right away. There would be people looking for them. It didn't matter if they got all A's or all F's, they were all hired. And that people of color would not get hired or would take a lot to get hired. So when she got her job with Con Edison, she was so happy and she knew about the pension. So her goal was that pension, but she had to fight. I'm thinking of that Color Purple line. You had to fight for that
Yeah.
job because the things that they put her through at that job, like there's so many stories. She would do a lot of the work, and the others would socialize because they were all buddies, and they would give her a hard time and saying, "I don't know why you're here because you're taking this job away from Uncle Charlie." When people would come in to inspect to see if all of the jobs were necessary, they had piled all their work on top of her desk. So she was doing everybody's work. But when the inspectors came around to check to see if they were over hiring, they would take all of the work off of her desk and put it on their desk and point to her desk and say, she has nothing to do. We have no use for her. Things like that. She was, goodness gracious, she was harassed so much. But there was always an angel. And so that's why, Crystal, you're right. God is good. Every day she would pray that she would keep her job, that they wouldn't fire her. That was her prayer every day. And there was a gentleman that said to the others, stop giving her a hard time. If you keep bothering her, I'm going to stop giving you stock tips. Do you know they all became millionaires because of this man's stock tips? And my mother did not become a millionaire because she didn't understand. They didn't share to the degree. She overheard stuff and invested in stocks and made a little bit of money that way. But they all became millionaires. And
So as
isn't that
women, as we, Krista, you also talked about the family stuff too. But as women, in our challenge, even in our everyday challenges, we face challenges as well. And like you said, particularly with the children, when you have that child that you got to deal with, plus the job as well, and you trying to balance, it does become rough. But I feel that for some reason, there's something that God put in women that we are able to deal with that job, husband and the children. Because I know even when my daughter was small and I had to leave the job, go pick her up from the babysitter, go take her to the next babysitter, and get to college at night. And I had to do this at night. I went to college at night, all three colleges at night, and stuff like that. Then you got to come back home. Then you deal with the husband, get everybody ready to bed. You got to get them up the next day. You got to get back to the job again to deal with the situations and stuff going on to the job. But sometimes I think a lot of stuff is done to us too, is because we allow it to happen, and that we don't speak up and say what what's right and what they doing to us is wrong and all that kind of stuff. I think that also has a lot to do with it too, and we have to really learn how to speak up for what's right for us. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back to talk about some more of our challenges. We'll be right back.
Oh yeah, it's Shannon.
I don't know why you're so sad. You've got a roof over your head.
You gotta stop with that depression stuff.
You alright?
It just feels like it's coming from everywhere.
Do you want to talk about it?
You can talk to me if you're feeling sad.
Whenever you need to talk,
I'm here, okay?
Oh yeah, it's Shannon. Keeping it real, keeping it real. Every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, on Facebook, YouTube. It's on tonight. It's Prime for 30 minutes. Join the chat. Hot topics, movers, shakers. How about that? Smart, outspoken. Don't miss a beat. It's true. Keeping it real with Shannon tonight. The hottest show in the city lights. It's Shannon. Oh yeah. It's Shannon. Keeping it real.
Hi, we're back. Thanks for joining us. We're talking about the challenges we face as women. What what are a tough challenge that you really have really faced that is just still in your mind now, but you made it, but at that time it was like one of your hardest challenges. What would you say was one of your hardest challenges?
Well, I definitely wanted to pick up on you said mentioned the word speak up. And speak up is so essential for especially all women to recognize the power in saying something. You know, studies show that one of the reasons why women don't make as much money as men do is because they tend to believe that if we do a good job, that people will just reward us for doing a good job.
Mhm,
And I think this might be true for people of color as well.
mhm.
And so, whereas our white male counterparts, they speak up and they demand for them to be paid,
Exactly.
even when they might not even deserve it, is what I found.
Mhm, mhm.
And women seem to just keep our heads down and we keep wanting to just do a good job, just do a good job when we have to know that closed mouths don't get fed. And so it's
Exactly.
very important that we say something and that we make sure that we get the credit that we deserve on the jobs, because the word says faith without works is dead. So if you're doing the work and you have the faith, it's important that you put that work forward and make sure that you do get what you deserve and what you're entitled to.
But see, that's one of the main issues, Krista, is with us women, particularly us women, is that we won't stick together on something. I always remember this on the job when I was working there, and they used to wouldn't give the secretaries the increases like they supposed to get, and all the other secretaries was getting raises. And so I said to the secretaries, because at that time back then in 1970 something, at the Board of Ed 110, you could count the many African American people that worked there. There was only about two, three blacks on each floor. And so I said, okay, we're gonna file a suit against them. We are all gonna get together and file a suit against the board because of how we're being treated, our bosses and stuff like that. And so we did. When time came for us to meet that day at the meeting, who do you think was sitting at the meeting? I'm the only one sitting there at the meeting. Nobody else came to the meeting and everything. They didn't change their mind because they worried about getting fired and all of that kind of stuff. Like, well, how are we going to get anything done if you're too scared to even come to the meeting so we can voice, and say how we feel and what we're not going to stand for and all that kind of stuff. But yet and still, I won the case. But what happened? They benefited off the case
Right.
that I went and had to talk. You know, how are we going to do anything? It's the same thing now. Even now, with things going on, sometimes you can't get us to come together and stick together and do what we have to do. That's why we're not moving.
A lot
Yeah.
of
Well,
people have fear. It's just fear. And especially when you're dealing with work, you have your single mothers who are afraid that if they lose their job, how are they supposed to support themselves along with, taking care of their kids? So it's like Crystal said, just keep your head down and just try to make it day by day and pray that you keep your job, which, that's not going to help you even make money because you do have to speak up if you
yes.
want to make that extra
But it's
money.
not even making it. It's not even always making the extra money. It's about your self esteem and how you feel about yourself. Don't you feel that you are worthy? don't you feel that you are worthy of a certain salary? You know, if I'm there working and doing my work all day, I'm not standing at the clock at 5 to clock out. I'm not coming in late. I stay late, do my work. I get to do the work in the morning early. I do my job. What make you think that I'm not worthy to get
Well,
some
not
extra money?
everybody is like you, Lottie. Some people, you have come into this world well equipped with plenty of worthiness and deservedness and self-esteem. Not everybody is like that. So that's something that they have to work on so that they can have more, reap the benefits of working. The other thing about challenges that I believe women face is that people don't typically hire, they don't hire people that are the best all the time. They hire people that they get along with. So networking and socializing is important. And sometimes if you're focused on being a good mother, working hard and getting back to the children, you may not take time to do the networking and the socializing that you do to develop those social skills so that you, even if you don't really care for those people, you might benefit from being more friendly than you might have been, because I can look over and over again at the people that graduated from I went to Syracuse. I went to Teachers College at Columbia, and not always the best people with the people with the best grades got the jobs. It was the people that did the networking, became friends with. People want to work with people that they like.
That's
It's
true.
not, but it's not always about the good
It's
grades
not
and what
always
school you
right,
went
right.
to and all that kind of stuff. It's not even about that. You can go to Harvard or any of those schools. That don't make you smart. You can be going to a community college and be
Oh,
smarter than the
absolutely.
ones that went to Harvard. It ain't
You're
about
right.
that. It's about who you are
You
and
are
how
right
you
about that.
build yourself up and stuff like that. Because you can get along with people. Because you want to get along with people. You don't want to be on a job that you don't get
Not
along with.
everybody has social skills, Lottie. You're
And you come
assuming
into
that
Yes,
work
everybody
every day
has social
miserable.
skills.
Who wants to be on the job miserable every day?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's also, when you think about the culture of corporate America, and when there aren't a lot of people that are similar to you, these things do factor in when you're the only one, which is why representation really matters a lot, because it often is who you know when it comes to getting internships and getting other opportunities. You'll find in a lot of these corporate jobs, there's a lot of nepotism. There are a lot of people
Oh
who,
yeah.
are giving jobs to friends of a friend. Black
Mhm.
people, we didn't have that luxury. If we have a line of first slavery, then segregation, we don't have a lot of people that we can call on to say, put in a good word, or, bring me to this next function, or introduce me to so and so. And that puts us at a huge disadvantage, which is why when we talk about why certain programs like affirmative action came about in the first place, it really was to make it possible to open up a door. Not that we weren't qualified to be in the door, to get into the door. It was that the door wasn't open to us at all. And so we didn't have an option to even show the type of work that we can do. But I think one of the issues is an absence of leadership. Lottie, when you were speaking, I was thinking about the union movement. These things happen because people stood up. My son
Mhm.
right now is really into looking at old YouTube videos and videos of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, and hearing some of the speeches that they did during a time when, they were killed, but they could have been killed even sooner based on some of the things that they said. And when we look at leadership, it's so important that we have that leadership. And it's wonderful that you were able to do that, and then other people benefit from other people making that sacrifice. But often the people who make the sacrifice, they don't usually get the benefit. The
Mhm.
benefit comes down the line, but somebody has to be willing to step up. You think about those people who sat at those counters and got hot food thrown on them, who had dogs sicked on them, who
Mhm.
went to jail. They did that so that we can have the opportunities that we have now. And unfortunately, the next generation oftentimes doesn't view it the same kind of way, because there's a distance from it. And we
That
have to make sure that they feel it.
when you said that, Chris, about the nepotism, it made me think of the time at the Board of Ed when I was working in the superintendent's office, right? And so the supervisor in there was a position there. So rather than her giving it to the girl that had taken the test and had passed and everything, she gave it to her daughter-in-law and brought her daughter-in-law in on the position,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, oh no, that's not happening, because I'm going to get my position because I know I had a high mark on the test. So what I did was I would go up to the chancellor's office on the floor that the chancellor was on. Then I found out from the secretary what time he leaves in the evening and what time, he normally comes in and everything, right? So what I would do is stand downstairs on the first floor and wait for him to come down come down the elevator to be leaving and going home. So this particular day, I said, no, I'm gonna get to talk to the chancellor because this is not gonna happen. You're gonna give me my position or whatever, right? And so I waited for him. When he stepped off that elevator, I had told him in 4 minutes what the problem was while he was on the way out the door. And he said to me, come to my office tomorrow morning, right? So I told her that I had to go make a delivery. And I went to his office like he told me. And I finished telling him the story of what they was doing downstairs and how they was treating people and everything. And so he called her in a meeting and everything. And she had to find me a position. And what they did, they found me a position in another building because they thought they were doing something. She thought she was doing something to hurt me by putting me in another building. But that was the best thing that she could have ever done was put me in the other building. I got the position, put me in another building. I was working with two principals. They loved me and I loved them. When my child got sick in the hospital, I was sitting at the desk crying. They said, Lottie, you go to that hospital and don't you leave until your baby come out of that hospital or whatever. So you see how God works, and stuff.
Yes.
That's what I say. You got to fight for what you want.
Well,
If you
it
ain't
sounds
gonna
like
fight,
both you and God were
You
working.
have to,
that's
yeah,
right.
you have
That's
to.
right. It wasn't gonna, oh no,
And
no,
this
no.
is a great place to leave this conversation in that power of God and you working together.
You know.
It's the end of the show.
Oh, it's the end of the show already. Oh, wait
Yes,
a
it
minute.
is.
I
Time
ain't
flies.
finished. I ain't finished. We got more stories to tell. But
We definitely do.
anyway, it's the end of the show, and we want to thank the ladies for sharing some of their stories today. And think about what you want and be strong in what you want and fight for what you want because you are worthy. There's no more anybody else more worthy than you are. You know, if you make one step, God will make two steps. So hey, so thank you for joining us today, and as always, we'll see you next time.